Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First off, thanks for visiting my channel and watching this video. I appreciate it. Before you leave, if you'd hit the like button down below, and if you enjoy the content, make sure to check out some other videos and maybe subscribe to my channel. I'd love it if you would. With that being said, though, lately, as oftentimes I find inspiration in nature for jewelry pieces, so sometimes I do animal kind of things, and I've oftentimes wondered what it would be like to do an octopus sort of pendant, and so I decided today maybe we'd try to do something a little more complicated, and I'll see if I can pull this off. But I have some ideas in mind, and I've sketched out kind of what I'm going to do, and we'll see if we can do it. So stay tuned. So forgive my lack of drawing skills here, but I initially was going to use a piece of apatite that I had. I decided I like this piece of Larimar better for his head, so I'm going to go ahead and use the piece of Larimar so it doesn't match my little drawing perfectly. And I think I'm going to downsize the tentacles that I've come up with here. And this little web here is going to be behind both the stone bezel and I'll solder these tentacles on top of it like that after I shape them and everything. And then we'll put a bail on. I think I might do a hidden bail on the back, as well as a pin, so you can wear it as a pin as well. So let's see what we can do with this thing. For the materials, I got a teardrop shaped stone, a Larimar in this case. I'm going to use 3/16 of an inch bezel strip. It's fine silver. Two types of sheet. For the back of the bezel, I'll use 26 gauge sterling silver. I think for this webbing here, I'm going to use a little bit thicker stuff. It's 22 gauge sterling sheet. And then for the tentacles, I think size-wise, I'm going to use, my initial thoughts are anyway, that I'm going to use 6 gauge or 8 gauge. I think 8 gauge will work just fine. Like I said, I'm going to downsize these tentacles just a bit. So just checking to make sure my stuff is in frame here. I've been really struggling with keeping stuff in frame since I moved it to the side view over here a little bit. Still trying out some solutions. Hopefully it'll continue to get better. But I occasionally move out of frame, so have patience with me while I fix these issues. Okay, so first I'm going to make a bezel for the stone. Oh, I also picked out a couple of little white opals here. And I'm going to mount these in an unusual way to be eyes. So they kind of stick up above the stone, the main stone, which is his head. So we'll put these kind of guys right here. And I'll show you how you can do that. So I think those will make nice eyes. I was struggling to go with opals or praisiolite, which also look kind of cool. But the praisiolite was just a little bit flashy, so I think we'll go with this. But let's get started on our bezel. So when I'm doing something with a point like this, I usually start my bezel by making a sharp bend in it like that, so you can get it pretty close to a point there. And then once you do that, you stick the point right in there, and then you can wrap the bezel around it like that. And get it pretty snug there. If you haven't watched my videos before, when you're making a bezel, I usually make them square. When I'm doing a little bit bigger one, if you put a little dimple in the bottom, it makes the overall thing a little springier. So it's easier to get these two flat ends to push together nicely. pretty good. Okay. Cut a little piece of 26 gauge here for the back of this bezel. When I do bezels, I'm just doing a plain bezel with no decorations around it. I just cut a rectangle that's about 1/8 of an inch bigger on each dimension. It's funny. When I tell people in my classes to cut 90-degree angles to use the sheet the most efficiently, I end up with people who don't listen, and then I'll see this like oval cut right out of here. Or they'll cut their rectangle right out of the middle of a side and then bend it up and cut it off. It never made any sense to me why people do that kind of stuff. It's not logical. But, okay. So I'm going to flatten this out. I use pretty much hard solder for everything. I know that is counter to the way a lot of people do things, and that's fine. But I like the way it polishes better because it's got a higher percentage of silver in it. One of the things I see people do a lot is when they're soldering a bezel to a base, they'll use like 30 little tiny pieces of solder all the way around the inside. And that seems like a lot of extra work to me when you can throw a few big pieces in there. As long as the solder flows and it's in contact with both the bottom and the side, it'll wick along that entire seam. So you don't have to space it as evenly, as long as you heat the thing pretty evenly. You know, when it starts to flow, you can pull that solder around with the heat. So make sure it's touching everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. It's just more work. Okay, I'm just going to trim off the excess here. And file off the excess. When you're filing these down, I like to make it so there's no seam left that you can see at all. So it looks like a single piece of metal. Now we got to figure out how big a piece we need of this 22 gauge here. This is a little bit thicker. I think I'm just going to start by cutting out a square that's a little bit bigger than I need, and then I can cut it down. Okay. My thought process here is that I'm thinking it might be easier to solder this onto this before I start shaping, you know, these little web kind of areas that are underneath the tentacles. So I think I might do that, and then we'll see how that works. So easiest way to do this probably would be to sweat solder a little bit of solder on the back of the bezel here. So that's what we'll do. Let me make sure this is all flat and filed and everything first. I'm just going to put plenty of solder there and get it to pre-melt on there. Alright. I'm going to turn this off to walleye position. And I may put a little piece of metal under here just to lift it up so it's flat, this. I'm just going to take a little piece of scrap there so it's kind of elevating this part. So we just need to get it hot enough to where the solder that's on the back of the bezel reflows. But in order to get it to stick, We need to make sure this thicker piece of sheet on the back reaches 1450 degrees as well. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time over there to make sure that guy gets hot, because the bezel itself probably has less mass than this does. Either way, I want them both to reach temperature at about the same time. You can watch the other solder joints when they start to get liquefied-ish. You know, woo! Ah, we got a little drift on that one. Okay. I think we definitely got flowage there. Okay. I'm just going to leave that marked up like that, and then I'm going to cut some of my 8-gauge half round here. I'm just trying to get an idea of how long I want these to be. So I think I'm going to downsize the tentacles just a skosh. That's about right for the second one. These ones I think can be a bit shorter than for the top ones. Maybe these two are pretty close to the same length, just shaped a little differently. Maybe a little bit longer. Alright, got these here. First off, I'm going to file one end flat, each of them. Okay, my next step I'm going to do mostly off camera because it's going to take a while. So I need to file these into a kind of a tapered, so they're widest at this point, and gradually taper to a narrow end here. You can do it with a grinder if you need to, or whatever, but just for the sake of not making you watch me file 8 of these that take quite a while for each one, I'm going to let you not watch it. It's time to do a little serious filing, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, I'm back, and I'm going to start shaping these tentacles. I think is going to be what I'll do next. And I got these as the top ones, these as the next ones down, and so on and so forth. So, I think what I will do, let me use my use my flat nose pliers like this, and try to keep it flat on the table here. That allows me to curve it a little bit like that without the thing twisting too much on you. The reason it tries to twist is because you're stretching out this part of the curve and you're compressing that part of the curve, and so it tries to twist into a way that'll bend more easily. Use my needle nose to do a little fine tuning here. Make sure everybody's seeing what I'm doing here. Okay, the other part is going to be a little bit harder to bend. So I'm going to use some leverage trick here. I'm just basically going to keep playing with it till I get the curve how I like it. If you need to, you could use a vise to do this kind of thing, or more than one pair of pliers to grab it. I know sometimes with small pieces I definitely can use a pair of pliers in each hand, and that helps me out a lot because my hands are kind of big to hold little tiny pieces. We'll go with that. I got to do this one in the opposite direction, and I'm just going to work my way down through these. I'm trying to get two things the same. If they're going in opposite directions, you can oftentimes lay them back to back like this and get an idea of how close you are. So this one needs to go a little bit further. That's pretty close, actually, surprisingly. I will, of course, be creating some tool marks here when I'm putting a lot of pressure on these, so I'll be doing some cleaning up of the file and the Dremel before I put these all together. When you're doing this, if it starts to get too hard to bend without it trying to twist, or it starts damaging the metal too much, you can always stop, anneal it to reduce some of the work hardening that you've done by bending it, and then continue to bend after that. That sometimes will make it a little easier to bend things. Next ones look like they're just kind of a straight curve along the whole length. I need to cut these to the size that I want them to be, and also so that they meet up nicely with the side of the bezel there, so I'll cut them at a little bit of an angle, like that probably. And that'll allow me, I want to have these little peaks of the webbing behind the tentacles. I want that to, peak at the high point behind each one of these guys here. So let's cut these off. That looks alright. Okay, I think it's time to start doing some trimming. I'm going to do some with the tin snips and probably some with the Dremel with the ball burr on them to kind of round these out, but I'm going to start with this bottom one here. Okay, I think we can start assembling some of this stuff. Okay, so I think the easiest way to put these on is I'm going to sweat some solder onto the back of these tentacles here, and then we'll flip them around and then get them positioned and then reheat the whole thing till it solders down. And then we'll just work our way down as far as tentacles go. Okay, as long as those all soldered on okay, I'm going to take a little neck break. My neck gets sore doing this kind of stuff, but he's coming along. I think he'll be kind of cool when we're done. So I'm going to let him clean up for a bit. So I'm relatively pleased with that so far. I need to make some eyes here. So I'm going to use these little opals. And so I will need to make bezels for those. I'll do next. These are pretty thin little opals. I'm just going to split this bezel in half and then use use it for both bezels. Not sure that's going to work. What if I just put a silver ball underneath there? So here's my thought. I think what I'll do is I'll solder these in here. In theory. And then I'll use the Dremel to slope the top of the ball so I can use it as a platform for these to lean on. We'll see how that works. So let's see if we can do that. Somebody posted or asked me in a comment the other day whether I ever shot things off the table and sent them into another dimension. And that happens a lot. I spend a lot of time crawling around on the floor looking for things that I've knocked off the table. So if that's your problem, I also suffer from that one as well. Could just leave little balls for eyes, I suppose, but seems like octopuses and octopi and squid always have oversized eyes. So you can see I just kind of used a Dremel to just grind those so they're at an angle like this. And then we'll see if we can't solder those on there. And I think create a lot of solder on the back of these guys. A little sweat soldering. We'll have more success in getting those to lay down. Cool this off and take a look at the solder joints. Okay, I think that's on there, but just to be safe, I'm going to heat it up and let it pickle for a while. I think I might call it a night tonight, and then tomorrow morning I'll come back and I'll finish the hardware to make it into a pendant and a pin. If we have room to do a pin, we'll see. So after a little cleaning up, kind of inspecting where things are soldered, make sure things stuck where they were supposed to. I think those look pretty good. I will likely before I set the stones, I'll probably file these bezels even shorter. Those opals are pretty skinny, and I can get by with that. So I'm just going to do a little cleanup, and then I'm going to add some hidden bales on the back here, 2 little things. And I don't think I'm going to do a pin on this one. It's just not very big, and I'd rather do a good pin back on it if I was going to do something this big. So I think I'm just going to make this one a pendant. This is called a magnesia block. Not sure why, but it's a softer surface and you can push things into it, which is handy sometimes. In this case, I'm going to be putting some little loops on the back here. 12 or 14 gauge half round, I'm not sure which, but it's relatively small. It's easier to shape these while they're still attached to a bigger piece of wire, so I'm going to kind of make a loop like that, cut it off. I'm putting the rounded side inwards. That makes the chain go through it more smoothly. To be relatively close to the same size. So I could pre-melt some solder or sweat some solder onto the bottoms of these little hidden bales, but this time I think I'm just going to flux it and then put a little bit of solder near the base of each of those and let it flow. That's another way you can do it. This is one of those situations where most of the mass is elsewhere, so I'm going to heat a lot down here first. And I may need to nudge these pieces of solder so they're just absolutely touching these, because sometimes if they're not quite touching, it'll flow onto the back of the piece, but not onto the bale, because solder doesn't like to jump gaps. Unfortunately. Got some flowage there. It hangs. Looks like it hangs okay. Okay. Let's let that pickle for a bit, and then I think with this one I'm going to do a lot of the polishing in advance because of the opals that are in here for eyes. So I'm going to have this mostly polished before I set the stones on this, just because I'll do that sometimes when I have softer stones like opals. It's nothing more frustrating than getting everything all done and then when you're polishing, scratching a stone. So I'm back, and I did a lot of pre-polishing. It's a trade-off when you're doing polishing before you set your stones. Like with opals, are easy to scratch, so sometimes I do some of the polishing in advance. But the trade-off is your bezels are delicate and unprotected on the polishing wheel, and if you're not careful you can tear a bezel, so it's always a little risky to do that. But I thought I'd get most of the stuff done before we got everything in and then just do a light dust up at the end. I'm also going to oxidize the area around his eyes and the little webbing in the back so that it kind of stands out. And then I think we'll be done after that. So let's set these stones. Start with the Larimar. Straighten his eyeballs back out. I bent him up a little bit while I was doing that. And so far I like him. Let's oxidize him. This is an oxidizing compound. Nasty kind of stuff. Notice these make my sausage fingers look more sleek. Okay. Alright, there he is. It's relatively like an octopus. It's kind of a stylized octopus. I may need to do some adjusting on the way the arms are bent to make sure he's pretty straight, but generally I'm pleased with that. I think he came out pretty. So, yeah, little hidden bail back here. I'll take some pictures and put them at the end. Nice pendant, suitable for Octopus's garden under the sea or any other occasion. Okay, well that was our octopus pendant pin. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button down below and check out some other videos that I do. You can visit my website at cvpsilver.com, and if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So thanks for watching, and happy silversmithing. Take care.